Welcome to the market recap presented by Tackle Trading. Get in the game.
Good afternoon, Tackle Traders, and hello, YouTube. This is Frank coming to you with the market recap for the 17th of January. It's a Thursday. It looked a lot like previous days in the market till the end of the day. Did see some interesting action the last hour or so of the market. So we'll see what things are looking like. Of course, we have Netflix with earnings here this afternoon. Came out after the market closed. Just first glance, they were down 2-3% on an earned EPS beat and a revenue slight miss. So there's still a lot of time to shake out with that. So I'm sure we'll be talking about that tomorrow in the halftime report here as well. So should be fun. Good afternoon, Andy and Patricia. Always great to see you guys. Hope everybody had a great day trading. It's snowy in Utah today, and it's been snowing nonstop since this morning. But that's why you love the market, right? It can snow all at once outside, and it's not snowing in here. So looking ahead to earnings, in addition to Netflix coming out this afternoon, we have American Express, certainly no small name, J.B. Hunt, a relatively new addition to the S&P 500, and People's United coming out after the market closes here today, and then a little bit of a run tomorrow morning as well, tomorrow before the market opens. We do have a half dozen or so, nothing particularly huge. Schlumberger is out there, State Street Corporation, a few more financials, railroads. So we're going to end the week kind of like we started with earnings, and we'll be doing it again next week. So and good afternoon, Marie. Great to see you as always. So you're in also Taylorsville. My brother's close to you. Yeah, it's snowing where I'm at. So interesting times. A very interesting afternoon in the market. And hi, Tanner. How are you, my friend? Hope you're having a great day. Looking at a 5-minute chart, we had kind of followed the usual pattern that we've kind of grown accustomed to lately, where we had a little gap down on the open this morning and kind of just rallied up, kind of that slow, methodical grind up overall in the market, specifically here on the S&P 500. This right here is where our 50-day moving average is. We pushed through that average and just shot up, as you can see. Within 10 minutes, we were up to 26.44. Big move. Then gave it all back, pulling back to the 50-period moving average, bouncing up off of it. So a lot of just business as usual for most of the day, but a little bit of an interesting last hour, no doubt about that. Taking a look at where we are on our daily chart, and I guess I can get rid of you now. We did cleanly close above that 50-period moving average on the S&P. Another step, another bullish step, right? We had to wonder about that 50. We don't exactly know what number we want to call this support, right? We know it's a zone. Don't really know exactly what number. This is one step closer to not having to worry about it, right? So another positive close, including, for the most part, a pretty solid, last hour of trading. And hi, Lorena, great to see you. So really just another little step for the bulls here today over on the S&P, but cleanly breaking and closing above that 50-day moving average, at least for one day. Of course, we've already taken out the 50 in the NASDAQ. It kind of been leading the way as far as that goes, continuing to hold above that as well over in the NASDAQ. Not the strongest area today in the market, but certainly continuing that overall upward momentum. So, very similar to what we've really kind of been discussing for a week now. It's just little bullish signal on top of little bullish signal, just one kind of after another. We closed right there at that 50, just a hair above that 50 on the Dow Jones 2 to add a little bit more fuel to that fire. So we're definitely seeing, some folks don't look done yet, right? They don't look like they're quite tired of buying. We are showing resiliency, as we've seen several times in the last week and a half. Gap down, on the open, only to fight back, and people have profits to take, right? Those bulls have profits to take, and they just keep on jumping in. Got to look at that as a sign of strength. And maybe interestingly, more interesting than anything, I don't know, they're very interesting day on our indexes, I think. But the Russell certainly getting in on the party too. We've been consolidating, kind of closed right at that 50, right at that old floor here basically the last week, able to cleanly break back above, close back above the 50, that old support zone at 1467, where we kind of called it a day. So just another positive step, just another positive step for the bulls, really across the board, in my opinion, at least from an index perspective. Just kind of business as usual. Really, it's been a slow grind, right? Especially after the last week, had that nice little burst, post Christmas, but we've just kind of had that slow inch your way up, and that doesn't look like it's done quite yet. Continue to see some bullish signals in the market, and maybe equally as important, we really aren't seeing any sell signals yet. They're really just not developing, at least from a broad perspective. So it should be fun to see how this ends. I said it last week, I'll say it this week. I would want to close out positions on Friday, but no one ever accused me of being brave. So I get that. We did see nice action over in the material sector here today. We kind of saw that doji settle in a couple of days ago, a little upward movement yesterday, and a really strong day. And these guys kind of earned it the hard way, if you will. They took part in that late day surge for sure, but they were kind of grinding up pretty positively throughout much of the trading day. So it wasn't just us kind of looking at that price action and the development over the last couple of days with that upward movement yesterday. Looking at the materials, it looks like we've got some stuff ahead of us. I do think we want to be keeping an eye on it. It's going to be this old support. It's going to be our trend line. We did close above the pretty flat 50, but I'm going to be watching that trend line that's going to be lining up really nicely with this old floor, this old support level. That should be tough to break. And that is, for me at least, I'm going to be, looking at that very closely. Hey, if it breaks it, great, but I'm not going to assume it can break that trend line. But a great price action here today in the material sector for sure. Energy even got in on the action. I don't think it really did enough to give us any real information in comparison to kind of how it's behaved the last couple of trading days, where we basically had two back-to-back very, very small dojis. Did see some movement today, but we are still pinching between that rising 9 EMA and that falling 50 SMA. We're still at that old support zone. I think again, I think you could probably argue we closed above it, and I wouldn't put up a fight. I probably would argue that myself, but I think you have to take out that 50 before we expect more bullish momentum. Maybe I'm off there, but that will be what I'm looking for. And hello, Dan. Good to see you. Welcome to Market Recap. I was talking to Tiago over in the clubhouse yesterday and said, hey, we need to come up with a clever name. And then I thought, maybe I'll just rip off the halftime report's name. So not be creative at all. But back over to energy, we are kind of pinching between that rising 9 and that falling 50. Those are going to be the areas that I'm looking at. I don't think we're seeing any signals. In my mind, I'm not seeing any that I'm comfortable taking from really either perspective. And to be honest with you, I'm kind of open whichever way it wants to break. I just don't have a very strong opinion right now. And I don't think traders do either. This is a big day over the last week, and we're still in the exact same pricing area, right? So, I don't know, maybe some more aggressive entry methods would have folks saying this is a break. I think in the purest sense of the word, it did break some resistance, but I think we need to give it a little more room to get some confirmation personally. Over in financials, another round of earnings, including Morgan Stanley, not as good as yesterday's earnings in the financial sector, but a little bit of a mixed bag. Yeah, exactly, Marie. I was thinking that, and I thought, man, that's copyright. So, not as good of earnings. Morgan Stanley did miss and kind of sold off in the into the open, but financials kind of rebounded. Again, partially with the overall market in that late day surge, but they were kind of building that momentum throughout the course of the day as well. So, it appears that folks are still moderately interested in financials overall. While I don't think earnings have been awesome to something to get super excited about, I don't think they've been bad at all, and I think I'd call them more good than bad personally. And beyond that, I mean, we still have room. And that's always something I always focus first and foremost on, is that price action, because my opinions are biased. They're wrong sometimes, wrong a lot of times, right? I always start with the charts because the chart is, it's always honest, right? It's never negatively influenced by whatever is in its mind. So definitely still have some room over there. Another day closing above that old support zone, which we thought maybe was going to be resistance, and we got out of it easy. We didn't even have to test it, right? We got to gap above it yesterday and hold it as support. I'm still not going to be surprised if we see some profit taking in the financials. But I'm a wimp. I always think like that. But just looking at where we are from a technical point of view, we still have some room, in my mind at least, to run over in the financial sector. Continues to be, in my opinion, an appealing area from a bullish point of view in the short term, of course. And that's usually how my brain thinks. I think kind of day to day and swing to swing. So over in the industrials, we were able to break out cleanly. I want to come into the intraday because we've watched this and kind of laughed a little bit at it together for the last week using that same intraday high. That was an old, historic level of support on a daily time frame, but we were able to take that out early on the day. We look at a 15-minute time frame, and we've basically been consolidating up there for lots of candles, right? Cleanly breaking out of that early on the day, pulling back, pretty early in the market day and testing it, bouncing, and of course taking part of that late day surge that so many other things did too. I think you have to call this a buy signal, depending on how aggressive you are. I like the recap, gang. It's different but similar, right? So I like it. Maybe we'll steal it. Thank you, Marie, and hi, Abel. Good to see you. Looking at this sector again, one of the issues is that I've had personally is there's since really back here when we saw that first buy signal like we did in so many of the other sectors, is just layers. So many layers. Now it's been winning these fights, maybe a little slower than in a lot of our other sectors, but it's been slowly but surely winning these fights. I'm going to keep an eye on this kind of as that last line. If we can break through that, this is all of a sudden an area that, while it's had a lot of layers on top of it in the last couple of weeks, not a whole lot if we can push through that for a little while until we get into the 72, mid 72 range. So should be interesting. A nice clean breakout. It's just one day. We're already at another challenge here today off of today's just today's price action, but definitely nice to see. And that happened honestly, right? And that always is something I think is worth noting. It's easy when the whole market's going up, it's easy to go up. Whole market's going down, it's easy to go down. So, when market just kind of hanging, I'm always going to take note of that. Over in tech, we are very, very close. You could even argue, depending on exactly where your line is, that we kissed that trend line over in the tech sector ETF here today. Certainly no confirmation of selling, in my opinion. We are kind of, again, developing that kind of pinch situation with the rising short term, in this case, the 9 EMA, and the falling 50. It's got to get through that. I've liked tech, and I've liked it because it's had room to operate. I'm going to respect this trend line. For better or worse, I'm going to say this is resistance. This is a place where, I should be taking profits, not be looking to make new bullish trades. Maybe, I don't think there's a way to get bearish tomorrow necessarily at that trend line, but could be an area, or we could ultimately break, next week and change my mind. But I always am going to err on the side of caution when it comes to support and resistance. And I think this trend line, it's close. Everybody's line is going to look somewhat the same. It's lining up with that 50. There's other areas that have room right now, don't have that overhead, in my mind at least. So I think right now it's let's kind of see where we go from here. If we break it, I'll definitely call that a buy signal. If we get some confirmation of selling, I'll call it a sell signal. So I expect to like tech at some point next week. I just don't expect to like tech tomorrow on either side of the coin personally. Over in staples, again, just hanging out as they continue to hold steady, continue to show okay momentum, but not able to break through resistance levels. Really haven't even cleanly tested that old support zone, in my opinion, yet. It's close. We could test it as early as tomorrow, right? We're that close to it. But as I've said many, many times, and you don't ever have to agree with me, and I always want you to agree with me on your own and not because I said so. But for me, it's not changed. The numbers are 51 and 52. get out of there, then we can talk. Right now, I don't want to get stuck in one of these sideways stretches on a directional trade if I can avoid it. And really the same thing's going to go for the utility sector that's inching its way up closer and closer to resistance. So at least in game planning going into next week, can be thinking about some potential breakouts in that sector. Not that I assume it's going to happen, but we're getting close enough that it could theoretically happen. And probably not tomorrow. I mean, of course it could happen tomorrow, but that'd be some pretty good movement. Not that it can't move. Really, the numbers stay the same. I'm going to continue to treat it like it's sideways personally until it's cleanly broke through that 52 or that 51, or I'm sorry, that 53.50 or that 51.50. And until then, I'm just going to wave at you and say hello, utilities. So that's about all the time I'm going to spend with the utility sector today. Now, over in healthcare, closing right at that floor. Now, we did break it on the intraday. We worked into that 89. We pushed through it. We even pushed through the 50-period moving average. Overall, I do really like this sector personally, but we just weren't able to quite close. And again, you can kind of see overall pretty decent day. So we were working into that $89 mark. We kind of pushed through that. Same time the market was really breaking out. So maybe got a little bit of benefit there. Maybe not. But I guess it really doesn't matter because we closed right at that point. I think you have to close above the 50 for the next buy signal. Certainly a good solid day overall in the healthcare sector. But for me, that's yet another challenge. If we can take that one out, just another step in the right direction. Loving the way this market's going because it's just not, it's doing things in steps, right? Industrials go sideways, break out right about the time tech is working into at least what I consider a resistance level. That's my kind of market. I do think we want to continue to watch this 89/50-day moving average as kind of that short-term resistance zone. I wouldn't hate to see a little bit of, profit taking, nothing dramatic over going into tomorrow, maybe take a run at this next week. That's what I will be asking for as I go through my checklist of, what do I want to beg for overnight? So, and over in discretionary, I don't think we got the information that we need. You could argue it, and I won't fight you, but we're hanging right around that trend line. Some folks are going to say it's broke it. Some are going to say it's not. It's close either way. I personally think we need to take out this high. That'll make me feel like no matter where your line is, I know we're all going to be close, but they're probably not going to be the exact same number. I think we'd all be seeing it as the same way, and not just us, but traders in general. Right. And so I don't think we really got any confirmation. We did work into those highs for sure. Maybe super aggressively, you could say we beat it by a couple pennies. For me, break out of this, and I'm very interested. I just don't think I'm going to call this a break personally. I don't think it did enough today to call it that. But within this trading range, I do expect at some point, really going out on a limb here, at some point it's going to break out one way or the other out of this little range. And I think either way, as long as it's fitting, my rules or your rules, I think either way it breaks, it's a tradable signal personally. Just going to have to wait another day. At least I am. At least one more day. Over in real estate, a pretty solid day there. Nothing super dramatic, but we did carry on that momentum, kind of closing right at that, that flat 50. This price level that at least I'm watching as a resistance zone. We kind of just seen it happen, and I remember it. You guys probably remember it too. We saw some price action there for a bit. I do continue to treat that as resistance myself. Breaking above that, again, another bullish signal. If it pulls back off of that, that's kind of what I would expect it to do. That doesn't mean that's what it will do, but I do expect that to be a little bit of a challenge. We did, unlike yesterday where we kind of ran right into it and then sold off on the intraday and still closed in the green, but we clearly sold off of that price point. Today, we ran right into it and closed right next to it. So, if it wants to push through, it could happen as early as tomorrow. We're close. We're very, very close to that price point. We might even be above it. That is more a zone than anything else in my mind. But really, I don't think much has changed over there for me. Overall, yeah, I think there's still more bullish signals. We're not seeing bearish signals. We're just not seeing them across the board. We're finding them in individual stocks, but we're not seeing them from a broad perspective for the most part just yet. for me, again, other things out there don't have that to contend with. And when I think about, the real estate sector versus the healthcare sector, which kind of similar situations in my mind kind of need to break this resistance before, I can take that next step from a bullish point of view. I just prefer the healthcare sector, right or wrong, time will tell on that. So, but I do, and I usually do, but I wouldn't really fight anybody who looked at it the other way either. They are very similar type of, situations in my mind. And over in the communication services, again, much like the NASDAQ, we're working into, the tech sector, we're working into that trend line. Depending on where it is, you might have stuck your nose above it. You're right there. I don't think you can say that it's broke that trend line personally. I would not agree if you said it had. There's more room in other areas. If I'm going to continue to build bullish trades into the market or manage existing bullish trades, things that are resistance, they're easy to get out of or watch for another couple of days. Things that have some room to run, those are the ones I want to stick around in. Maybe it's the right call, maybe it's the wrong call, but I do think it's going to be the right call over time. And so that will always be the way I think about things. For me, again, you guys know my opinions on this sector. I am warming up to it, but it does need to break out of that trend line before it gets me on board. And if I'm late to the party or I don't even get an invite, I can live with that personally. So pretty interesting day across the board in the market. Good, solid movement to the bullish side. We're continuing to see these little signals. Again, it's just kind of a chipping away. Chip away, right? One signal after another. We taken out some pretty big things. We'll still have overhead, right? That's not going away anytime soon. That's what happens when we sell off as fast as we did. But just another step, in the bullish direction. And again, like I said earlier, maybe just as importantly, where are the sell signals? Looking at all these charts, yeah, there's individual stocks and they're going to be out there for sure. But when you look at things from a broad point of view, per my rules, there's nothing that's generated a sell signal in any of the indexes, any of the sector ETFs, and I don't think my rules are all that crazy. Maybe they are, but I don't feel that they are. So we'll see where we close on Friday. Over on the VIX, really not much to see here. We continue to kind of hang out within that same general 18, 19 range as things have simmered down, right? At least for right now, things have simmered down a little bit of back and forth over in the dollars. We're kind of dealing with that 96 floor zone. Everyone's going to give it a different number. I call it 96 because that's easy. We continue to just kind of hang into that. I don't think you could, I wouldn't argue that we're back into that sideways range. So I'm still looking at the dollar more so as a bearish retracement. But I really am overall pretty neutral. I don't really think it's something I'm super interested in trading with where it is. But as long as I can't cleanly say that I'm back within that range, I'm going to continue to have just a slightly bearish bias personally over in the dollar. Maybe not as bearish as somebody else. I don't know, but I think there's just more appealing areas personally, if I'm being honest right now. But I can understand why some folks are looking at where it's a bearish retracement opportunity, no doubt. Over in gold, not a whole lot to see here. We continue to just hang out. This is a good thing. A lot of us who have taken advantage of gold or are in gold are probably, doing some cash flowing or things like that, or looking to do those type of things. So, it kind of just consolidating as opposed to pulling back, certainly not a bad thing. Really not a whole lot to see here. We know where the numbers are, at least approximately. Specifically what numbers you're looking at. We know 13, 1280, are kind of the shorter term numbers, wherever, whether it's 1303 or 1301 or 1307 or 1279, we're dealing with that same range we've been dealing with for weeks right now. Looking forward to the day that it tries to break out. But it can take its time. I'm in no rush. Silver, we did take out that floor yesterday. We saw that little, intraday. And again, it's just an intraday floor, but we did take that out yesterday briefly, rallied back through it, and then, did that same thing here again today, steep selling before giving that out again, ultimately rallying back pretty nicely throughout the course of the day. I don't think anything has changed overall for silver, just kind of some interesting intraday action. going on right now. A little bit of that flag developing here. Still no signals in my mind. Still no buy signals that we can say, yeah, buy silver right now. Again, overall, I wouldn't argue if someone, fit your rules, anybody buying silver right now. It wouldn't fit my rules right now. So I have a hard time seeing it fit anybody's. Not that I'm all that and a bag of chips or anything, but we think like we think, right? You could argue, we work to get in if we break out of this, descending, kind of trend line that we're putting in on the intraday. I still think, a better signal would be above 16 or a little bit of a deeper pullback. May or may not get either of those things though. So not, kind of some fun intraday activity in silver, but really nothing to change our charts. If you want fun intraday activity, spend the day hanging out with natural gas. For a second day in a row, almost top to bottom, working between that current trading range. This guy is volatile right now. He kind of simmered down for a little bit, but boy, he's gone right back into the volatility. I'm not on board, as I've said before. Before I'm interested, and I know I'm just me, and I know I'm also a whim. I need to see an open that's not a huge gap, one way or another that could, cause me some trouble. So while I would understand if someone called, above these highs a buying signal, I would understand if a break of the 50 was called a buying signal, a break of $4. I mean, these things are a little ways away, of course. Right now, for me, I need to see it stay in this range, do this again tomorrow, and then don't have some crazy dramatic gap over the, when you open up next week, and then we'll talk. Our range remains unchanged, so I get it. I get it from at least an intraday perspective. Folks buying off of that floor, selling towards that ceiling, but volatility is definitely there, and it continues to be, in my mind, a pretty tough area to want to trade. And I felt that way for a long time, and that's no secret, right? So it continues to be an interesting follow. Not really practical for me. I'm not really doing anything with it, but it's fun to watch. It is fun to watch. And lastly, over in crude, really kind of a whole lot of nothing to see here on our chart today. Again, really, unless it's an intraday breakout, I don't see where a trade is. As we've talked before, really, I think the swing numbers are very easy to identify at 50 and approximately 55. We're just going sideways, and that's okay too, right? That's okay. It's fine for things to take some time to develop. It's my preferred style. If you guys who know me better, that I'll sit and wait, and I love when these long-term floors or ceilings develop. They're my idea of a good time. And so, because eventually they do break, but I love it when they take weeks to ultimately break one way or another. I don't often get that. A lot of times things move faster than that. But I'm okay with that taking a little while going sideways. So really not a whole lot to see from a technical point of view. Over in our energy, we did see some movement in natural gas and really went nowhere, right? When Matt or Tim and Cody were talking about iron condors in the halftime report, and Cody said can't go both up and down at the same time. I was thinking, well, tell that to natural gas. It's technically that's true, but boy, they can move fast enough that it seems like it. So, very interesting day in the market. Again, just kind of building on those signals is kind of how I'm looking at things. For the most part, we've just kind of seen things continue to build on signals. We've got some resistance levels in things like discretionary, technology, communication services, but we're seeing, things with room to run in financials, things that just broke out, at least potentially in the industrials. So, it's not like everything's at resistance anymore. We were kind of there, and there's still plenty of resistance to be dealing with, no doubt. But all of a sudden, things are starting to kind of shake out a little bit on their own on a more individual level, which, of course, is my preferred market, more of a stock pickers type of a market. So should be a fun close going into tomorrow before we get ready for a nice weekend before we pick it right back up. So I guess that's going to do the market recap for today, guys. But as always, it is certainly my pleasure, and I do appreciate everybody's time. It's always great to see you guys here in the halftime report over in the clubhouse. You guys are my friends, and always great to see you guys, and appreciate you hanging out with me here. Be sure to follow us over at Tackle Trading on Twitter. And if you need to get added to our Team Tackle list, just give me a holler. You can, at Tackle Trading, or you can, at me at Frank Martin 23, and I will get you added over to that list. So if you do the Twitter thing, come on over and join us. It makes it easy to kind of keep track of each other and not get so lost on Twitter. I get lost on Twitter because I am not a social media person, but I am now. But I like it because I can hang out and talk with you guys, and it's a lot easier than, it's an easy way to communicate. I get why people like it. So yeah, we'll go with the recap game until we come up with something. That's going to be a tough one to beat, Marie. I do like that one a lot. So if you have a challenger, feel free to bring it up, and it can step to the champ right there. But we'll go with the recap game for the time being. And thanks for the idea there, Marie. Awesome stuff as always. Thank you so much, guys. Be sure to like the market recap if you did enjoy it. That really helps me know that we're moving in the right direction, helps YouTube know that people like us, which is always helpful as well. Keep an eye on how, the market responds to those Netflix earnings. Netflix, it's not that it is going to move the market. It's just that it can be a catalyst to move the market, right? So we don't want to get into whatever Netflix does, the market's going to do tomorrow. But we do want to respect that's a pretty big name, and it can be a catalyst, one way or the other. So kind of keep an eye on how that's looking on the open. Probably be a good idea. We'll kind of see where it closes here tomorrow afternoon. So as always, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure, and I appreciate everybody's time. You guys have a great afternoon, and happy trading. I will see you tomorrow.